Imagine being told that the greatest enemy of humanity did not just fall once, but is still falling continuously, relentlessly, and willingly. Scripture hints at this haunting truth. Satan is not merely a figure who rebelled in the distant past, but a being locked in an endless downward spiral, driven by pride that refuses to die. And that single idea opens the door to a much bigger, far more gripping story, one that shapes the spiritual conflict woven through history, culture, and even the choices we make every day. Before we journey deeper into this mystery, I want to invite you to become part of this community. If you find value in uncovering hidden layers of ancient texts, exploring the unseen dimensions of faith, and discovering insights that challenge how we understand the world, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach more people who are searching for clarity, meaning, and truth. Now, let us return to that powerful idea, a fall without end. Picture a brilliance so radiant that it once inspired worship, distorted over time into something twisted and unrecognizable. Pride did not just cause the fall, it sustained it. The deeper the pride, the further the descent. And for Satan, that descent became a defining identity. Not a moment, but a condition. Not a past event, but an ongoing state of corruption. This perspective reshapes everything. It forces us to look beyond the traditional image of a singular rebellion, and instead recognize a force that is constantly deteriorating, constantly moving away from the light it once reflected. And as we unravel this idea step by step, you will see how it connects to our world, our struggles, and the spiritual tensions that surround us today. From the moment we understand that Satan's fall was not a single event but a continuous descent, the story naturally turns toward the origin of that downward spiral, a beginning marked not by darkness, but by brilliance. Long before corruption shaped his nature, he stood among the most radiant beings in the heavenly realm, clothed in splendor that reflected the glory surrounding him. His presence shone with purpose, created to embody harmony and beauty. Yet within that extraordinary gift lay the seed of a growing desire, subtle at first, then consuming. Pride rarely announces itself with thunder. It rises quiet, feeding on admiration, swelling with self-importance until its host begins to see himself not as a reflection of greatness but as the source of it. In that ancient realm of light, pride transformed vision into ambition. What once inspired worship now demanded it. The one who had been appointed as a guardian of divine order began to look upon the throne of the Creator not with reverence, but with hunger. This was not a sudden impulse. It was the climax of a long internal drift, a slow shift in identity that turned a servant of the Most High into a challenger of the very authority that gave him life. As pride deepened, so did the distance between who he had been and who he was becoming. And with every step away from humility, the descent accelerated. But the most staggering part of this transformation was not that one being fell, it was that he convinced others to fall with him. His brilliance had once attracted admiration for righteous reasons, and now it drew followers into rebellion. The same charisma that once elevated worship now fueled defiance. He whispered promises of independence, power, and a new order where none would bow to the Creator's will. These promises ignited a dangerous fascination among many angels who had never imagined questioning divine authority. They did not fully grasp what they were stepping into. Rebellion had never existed before, and the idea of reshaping the heavenly hierarchy carried a strange allure. The unity of heaven trembled as loyalties split. Some resisted the influence, sensing the distortion creeping beneath the veneer of confidence, while others were swayed by the distorted logic of self-exaltation. The celestial realm, once harmonized in perfect obedience and joy, now witnessed its first fracture. The rebellion did not erupt in physical violence, for this was a conflict of allegiance, intention, and identity. It was the moment where the created challenged the Creator, where pride blinded beings of light to the consequences of turning away from the source of life itself. As the rebellion unfolded, The brilliance of the once radiant angel began to twist into something unrecognizable. What had been beauty became arrogance. What had been purpose became defiance. And yet, even as he descended, the fall was not instant. It stretched like a shadow over time, shaping everything he touched and influencing every being that joined his side. His followers, once pure reflections of divine order, found themselves caught in the same spiral, no longer beings who had merely stumbled, but beings whose spirits aligned with a growing corruption, whose identities changed not in a single moment but through a gradual surrender to pride. This rebellion was more than a challenge. It was a turning point that altered the direction of creation. A chorus that had once sung in perfect unity now carried dissonance. And the consequences of that dissonance would echo far beyond the boundaries of heaven. For the first time, the celestial realm encountered the weight of separation, the tension between loyalty and ambition, and the realization that even beings formed from light could choose a path that led them away from the very source that sustained them. And so, the story of a radiant angel who allowed pride to reshape his destiny becomes the foundation for the wider conflict we still sense in the world today. A conflict born not out of equality between forces, but out of a choice, one that transformed beauty into rebellion and set in motion a descent that has never stopped. The moment rebellion took root in the heavenly realm, the harmony that had defined eternity began to fracture. And the consequences of that choice rippled outward with a force no one had witnessed before. What began as a shift in loyalty soon unfolded into a full confrontation, not of weapons or violence as humans understand it, but of allegiance, authority, and the foundation of creation itself. The once radiant being who had allowed pride to turn his brilliance into ambition stood now at the head of a host of angels who had followed his rising unrest, their identities reshaped by the same corrupting desire that had drawn him away from humility. The celestial order, for the first time, faced opposition from within, and with that opposition came a conflict that had to be answered. In the heart of this growing tension, Michael emerged not as a challenger seeking glory, but as a guardian devoted to the order he had always upheld. His loyalty was not based on fear or obligation. It was rooted in an unshakable understanding of who the true sovereign was. As the rebellion intensified, the divide between those who remained steadfast and those who embraced defiance became impossible to ignore, and the heavenly realm braced for an inevitable clash of purpose. Michael's presence signaled that the Creator would not allow corruption to twist the shape of eternity without response. He did not rise in anger but in conviction, carrying the authority of the one he served. The confrontation that followed was unlike any event creation had known. It was not a struggle fueled by chaos but a decisive act to preserve harmony, a moment where loyalty confronted ambition. Saturn, once adorned with beauty and purpose, now stood hardened by pride and surrounded by those who echoed his defiance. He believed the brilliance he once possessed still gave him an advantage, and he held to the illusion that he could reshape the celestial order according to his own desire. But the radiance that had once defined him no longer flowed from the source of true strength, and the separation he had chosen had already begun draining the essence of what he once was. Michael and the loyal angels did not hesitate. Their resolve was steady, shaped by trust rather than fear, and the authority given to them was not something that could be challenged by sheer will. As they stood against the rebellion, the imbalance between truth and pride became clear. The defiant host could not withstand the weight of the very order they had rejected. What unfolded was decisive and irreversible, a declaration that rebellion would not share space with purity, that corruption could not coexist with light. When the clash reached its climax, the outcome left no room for uncertainty. Saturn and the angels who followed him were overwhelmed, not by force of might alone, but by the reality that no created being could claim a throne that was never theirs. The brilliance he once carried had fully faded, replaced by a shadow of what pride had made him. In a moment that reshaped the structure of eternity, he was cast out, permanently separated from the realm he had once adorned. The expulsion was not an act of cruelty, but a necessary boundary to protect the order he had sought to overturn. Losing his place in heaven meant losing the position he had corrupted, the authority he had misused, and the harmony he had abandoned. As the realm settled after the rebellion, the presence of Michael and the loyal angels stood as a testament to the enduring strength of divine order. The separation of light from defiance became one of the foundational truths of the story, a reminder that pride carries consequences, that rebellion reshapes destiny, and that even beings formed from radiance are not immune to the choices they make. The fall was complete, but the descent, as always, would continue. When Satan and the angels who followed him were cast out of the heavenly realm, the separation was absolute. Yet it was not an end in the way humans understand endings. Their fall did not resemble a mortal downfall, because these beings were not constructed from flesh that weakens or bone that fractures. They were formed as spirits, woven into existence with an essence that does not age, decay, or fade in the physical sense. And so, when the great rupture took place and the realm of harmony expelled the force that sought to reshape it, their existence did not simply vanish. Instead, it continued, but now outside the light that had once defined them. The exile became not a moment of disappearance, but a prolonged journey through a reality transformed by their own choices. This truth brings a profound shift to the story already unfolding, for it reveals that the consequences of rebellion were never meant to be immediate erasure. Their existence persisted because spirit does not perish the way matter does. The heavenly realm operates under laws different from those of the physical world, and in that realm, life is not sustained by the fragile balance of body and breath. When Satan turned from the source of goodness, he did not fall into non-existence. He fell into distance, into separation from the radiance that once shaped his identity. That separation became the defining condition of his state, a continuation of being, but without the light that once filled it. As he descended into this new existence, the consequences of rebellion became increasingly evident. No longer anchored by the presence he had rejected, his nature shifted inward, spiraling into a darkness formed not from the absence of life, but from the absence of alignment with the order he once upheld. This ongoing descent, which had begun long before the rebellion erupted, now accelerated in the space beyond the heavenly realm. The angels who followed him underwent the same transformation, not through physical ruin but through a corruption of purpose. Their spirits endured, yet their direction was altered, guided no longer by harmony but by the momentum of their own choices. Because they were spirit beings, death as humanity understands it had no hold over them. They could not be broken by time or destroyed by injury. Instead, their existence became a prolonged witness to the consequences of their rebellion. Their endurance served as part of a larger design, one that stretched far beyond the boundaries of a single event. Rather than ending their presence instantly, the Creator allowed their continued existence to play its role within a narrative that would eventually reveal the depth of justice, the clarity of truth, and the unwavering nature of divine authority. This continuation was not mercy in the gentle sense, nor was it weakness. It was a structured part of the story, one that moved toward a fixed point in time, the final judgment. Until that moment arrives, their state remains one of separation, a condition shaped by their own choices and emptied of the light they rejected. They move through existence with full awareness of the distance between who they were and what they have become, a distance that grows deeper with every step away from the harmony they abandoned. Their survival, then, is not a loophole or an oversight. It is a reflection of the nature of spirit, a reminder that existence for these beings is not tied to the physical world's cycles of birth and decay. They cannot die, but they can drift endlessly. They can endure without purpose. They can continue without returning to the state they once knew. And all of this leads toward a single, unbreakable promise that anchors the entire narrative: the moment when everything that has been distorted will be confronted by perfect justice. Until that time, their existence persists not as a sign of unchecked freedom, but as a testament to a destiny that has not yet reached its conclusion. Long before the rebellion shattered the harmony of the heavenly realm, long before the fall carved a permanent divide between loyalty and defiance, the scriptures had already preserved a poetic echo of what happened to the one who once walked among the highest ranks of creation. The passages in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28, though spoken through the context of earthly kings, carry imagery so vivid and layered that generations of readers have recognized a deeper reflection beneath the surface. These ancient writings portray a being clothed in unmatched splendor, one whose radiance was not merely physical beauty but a reflection of the glory he stood near. His brilliance earned him the title of light-bearer, a role meant to magnify the glory of the one he served. The text describes stones of fire, precious jewels adorning his form, and a presence crafted with precision and intention, suggesting a creation of uncommon distinction. Yet within this magnificence, pride began its quiet ascent. Ezekiel speaks of a heart lifted by beauty, a mind that grew inflated by the very perfection it possessed. What was designed to be a reflection of divine harmony became a foundation for self-exaltation. The more he admired his own radiance, the more he distanced himself from the source of that radiance. And in that distance, corruption found space to grow. Isaiah captures this shift with haunting clarity, describing an ambition that reached toward the heights of the divine throne. A desire not for closeness to the Creator, but for the authority belonging only to Him. The poetry of the passage reveals a being who looked upon the heavens and imagined them as a realm he could rule, whose ascent was not toward humility but toward dominance. This transformation did not occur in an instant. It unfolded gradually, shaped by choices that deepened the divide between who he was and who he aspired to become. His beauty, once a testament to divine craftsmanship, became a mirror he could not turn away from. His brilliance, once a gift meant to illuminate the glory of the Creator, became fuel for ambition. Pride blurred the boundaries between admiration and desire, and soon the longing to reflect light gave way to the longing to possess it. Isaiah's language portrays this shift with the image of a morning star attempting to rise above all others, only to fall from the height it sought to surpass. The corruption that followed was not merely an internal decay. It became a force that influenced others, reshaping the celestial realm as he drew followers into his distorted vision. What began as an inward shift took on the weight of rebellion, and the downfall described in these texts ultimately reflects both personal collapse and cosmic consequence. The light-bearer became the adversary, not by sudden transformation but through a long journey of self-exaltation that carried him further from the harmony he once embodied. His identity, once defined by proximity to the divine presence, became defined by opposition to it. And the descent that followed was not simply a fall through space, but a fall through purpose, character, and truth. These prophetic passages stand as literary monuments within the larger story, offering glimpses of a tragedy that reshaped the spiritual landscape. They bridge the radiance of his origin with the darkness of his rebellion, illustrating the profound shift from a being crafted in splendor to one who embraced defiance. And woven into these ancient words is an unspoken reminder that pride, once allowed to flourish unchecked, can transform even the most radiant creation into a force of opposition, altering the course of history and echoing far beyond the moment where the first seed of ambition took root. Once the light-bearer became the adversary, the nature of his existence shifted from radiance to manipulation, and the consequences of his fall extended far beyond his own descent. Separated from the realm he once adorned, he turned his attention toward those created in the image of the one he had challenged. No longer able to touch the heights he once occupied, he sought to influence the world below, attempting to twist what he could no longer undermine directly. His rebellion had reshaped him, and now his purpose aligned not with creation, but with disruption. He understood that while he could not dethrone the Creator, he could target the beings who bore the Creator's reflection, channeling his opposition into subtle influence and whispered distortions. Temptation became his primary instrument. It was neither loud nor dramatic. It operated quietly, appealing to pride, doubt, and desire, the same threads that had unraveled his own destiny. He did not force rebellion upon humanity. He suggested it, waving thoughts that made disobedience seem appealing, enlightened, or harmless. This pattern echoed the same drift that had led to his fall, and in it he found a strategy that allowed him to replicate fragments of his own descent in others. Even when he approached Jesus, he did so not with force but through persuasion, presenting illusions of power, protection, and glory as if they were shortcuts toward purpose. His temptation aimed not at destruction through violence but at misdirection through deception, attempting to nudge even the most steadfast toward choices that mirrored his own earlier path. Yet his influence was not limited to subtle whispers on earth. The ancient vision recorded in Zechariah reveals a deeper layer of his strategy, one rooted in accusation rather than enticement. The adversary stood before the presence of the Creator, pointing toward the flaws and failures of the faithful, attempting to use their imperfections as weapons against them. He understood that temptation only carried weight if people could be convinced that their missteps placed them beyond redemption. In this role, he became both the tempter and the accuser, drawing humanity toward error and then condemning them for stumbling. It was a cycle he repeated relentlessly, seeking to validate his rebellion by pulling others into a narrative where grace seemed unreachable and forgiveness impossible. This posture of accusation reflects the full transformation of his identity. The one who once walked among stones of fire now used the weaknesses of others as grounds for contention. He did not simply oppose humanity. He resented the relationship they were offered, a relationship he had rejected long before. By highlighting their shortcomings, he aimed to mirror the corruption that defined him, convincing them that they were no different, that their failures aligned them with his fate. His accusations were not expressions of insight but reflections of his own condition, projected outward in an effort to draw others into the same spiral that had shaped his own downfall. Every encounter humanity has with this influence, whether through temptation or accusation, reveals echoes of the deeper story that began before the world was formed. The adversary does not operate as an independent force equal to the Creator, but as a being defined by separation, using the fragments of his once great perception to distort the truth. His efforts to influence humanity do not arise from strength but from loss. They are the actions of one who seeks to anchor his identity by pulling others into the same distance he chose. And through these attempts, the story of his rebellion continues to ripple outward, not with the brilliance he once carried, but with the shadows formed by a fall that has never ceased. From the moment the adversary was cast out, a question has echoed through the ages. Why would the Creator permit a being so deeply corrupted to continue influencing the world? After witnessing the rebellion that fractured the harmony of the heavenly realm, after seeing pride twist a radiant servant into a force of distortion, it might seem logical that his existence should have been ended immediately. Yet the story shows something far more deliberate, revealing a pattern woven with precision through every stage of creation's history. The continuation of the adversary's activity is not evidence of divine weakness or hesitation. It is a reflection of a justice that does not rush, a mercy that allows space for revelation, and a wisdom that understands the full arc of rebellion in ways unseen from within the bounds of time. From the moment pride reshaped his identity, the adversary set himself on a path that could end only in distance from the one he had rejected. But the Creator, knowing the nature of spirit and the depth of intention behind every choice, did not impose an instant conclusion. Instead, he allowed the consequences of rebellion to unfold within a framework that balanced justice with patience. The adversary's continued presence does not diminish divine authority. It amplifies it by showing that every rebellion, whether celestial or earthly, moves toward a moment when truth is fully revealed and every intention stands transparent before the one who sees all. This appointed moment is not delayed out of uncertainty but out of completeness. For judgment without full revelation would neither teach nor transform. As the adversary influences humanity through temptation and accusation, the Creator's permission is not approval. It is part of a narrative that gives humanity the chance to choose freely. Love without choice is not love at all, and loyalty forced by the removal of alternatives is mere survival, not devotion. The adversary's presence creates tension, and within that tension people discover who they truly are. They learn to distinguish between deception and truth, between pride and humility, between the echo of rebellion and the call of compassion. The Creator does not allow this activity to flourish unchecked. He allows it to exist just long enough for every heart to reveal its direction, for every intention to surface, and for every soul to understand the weight of its choices. Yet woven into this structure is also mercy, the kind that does not rush destruction but waits for clarity. The adversary, despite his relentless efforts to distort and accuse, operates within limits he did not choose. The boundaries around his influence are not shaped by his ambition but by the Creator's restraint. Every temptation he sets forth is countered by an opportunity for resistance. Every accusation he raises is met with the possibility of redemption. This balance ensures that the story is not written by rebellion but by response, that the arc of history bends not toward chaos but toward understanding. And above all, the continuation of his existence points toward a future moment fixed long before the first fall began. There is a time appointed when every distortion will be addressed, when justice will not simply identify rebellion but resolve it. The adversary's activity persists only until that moment arrives, and the span between his fall and his judgment is not a sign of uncontrolled power, but of a divine patience that allows the full truth of every choice to be seen. In this way, the Creator demonstrates strength not through haste, but through the certainty that no rebellion escapes its appointed end. The story, shaped by justice, mercy, and understanding, moves steadily toward a conclusion in which everything hidden becomes clear, and everything distorted is finally confronted by the light it fled. In the end, the story of the adversary's rise, fall, and continued influence leads to a truth that threads through every chapter of creation. Choice is at the heart of the divine design. From the radiant beings who once walked among the stones of fire to the humans shaped from the dust of the earth, the Creator granted freedom not as an afterthought, but as a foundational gift. Loyalty without choice carries no meaning, and devotion without the possibility of refusal becomes nothing more than instinct. The heavenly realm learned this through the rebellion of the light-bearer, and humanity encounters it each time temptation and accusation cross their path. Every decision reveals who they are becoming, and every step they take is shaped by the tension between what they were created to be and what they choose to pursue. Because of this, the Creator does not erase the adversary simply to remove resistance from the world. Doing so would silence the very framework that makes love authentic and obedience meaningful. If rebellion were instantly eliminated, judgment would arrive without process, and justice would be reduced to a reaction rather than a revelation. Angels and humans alike must have the opportunity to decide not out of fear of immediate destruction, but out of conviction, trust, and recognition of truth. The presence of the adversary creates contrast, making clear the difference between humility and pride, between harmony and distortion, between fidelity and self-exaltation. Without that contrast, the story of creation would lack depth, and the freedom given to every being would lose its purpose. Eliminating the adversary before the appointed time would also undermine the integrity of justice itself. A judgment delivered before rebellion fully reveals its nature would be incomplete, cutting short the process through which every heart, intention, and allegiance becomes transparent. True justice does not rush to silence opposition. It allows every choice to unfold, every deception to expose itself, and every soul to demonstrate its path. Only then, at the moment chosen from the beginning, will judgment carry the full weight of truth. Until that time, the adversary's activity is restricted, observed, and ultimately woven into a greater narrative that leads not to chaos, but to clarity. And so the story closes where it began, with freedom. A freedom that elevates love, gives meaning to loyalty, and allows each person to respond to the world around them with intention. The fall of the light bearer, the endurance of his influence, and the certainty of his future judgment all point to a creator who values choice enough to allow it, even when it leads to conflict. Yet they also point toward a future where justice and mercy meet, where every distortion is corrected, and where the design first set in motion reaches its fulfillment. Thank you for joining this journey through one of the most profound stories woven into the fabric of faith and existence. If you found meaning, insight, or new understanding in this exploration, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can continue discovering more stories like this, stories that illuminate, challenge, and inspire.